Linda working on the butterfly. Coming to ask you to unmute, Linda.
Okay.
And let me find you here to spotlight. Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going. I've got a start on it. I actually printed everything out. I've read through everything several times. I didn't see any notes for, it said extra fabric required for the binding. So I am a total novice when it comes to quilting. So I need everything
Okay.
spelled out.
So you're making the butterfly quilt,
Yes.
and so the dimensions, oh my goodness, the final dimensions, if do you know by any chance what they are off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay,
Oh, okay, here it is. 47 by 38.5.
Okay, that sounds about right. So I love to do typed bindings.
Okay.
If I am, let me just get a link for you, because we have a class on how to do the no hands pipe binding. And once you've used it one time, you'll want to apply it to all of your quilts. So it's a binding that is completed 100% using your sewing machine, and it has a narrow piping tucked in between the binding and the actual quilt. So it really makes quite a huge wow factor difference to your quilts. And I love it because I don't like sitting hand stitching bindings down.
Okay.
So, and we have a class on how to do that, and I will, my system is, let's see, I'll grab your link. Yeah, this is the really popular way of finishing. There, pop that in the chat. That it's a really popular way of finishing your quilt. So I like to do my bindings with the no hands pipe binding so that there are no seam lines or no joins along any of the edges. So 47 inches, you want to add at least 2 inches, probably 3 inches on either end, which puts you at 53 inches. So given that the width of a piece of fabric is what, 44 inches, you would end up having a join if you cut your binding on the width of the fabric, right?
Right.
So it uses more fabric because you need to cut on the length of the fabric. So you need 53 inches, or 54 inches is a yard and a half. But that will allow you to cut the binding pieces in one length without having to put any joints on.
Okay. So do you cut those first then before you cut out your other pieces?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. I typically will do that. So a yard and a half, you'll, depending on how wide you want the binding to be, if you do a 1/2 inch finished binding on it, then you'll need to cut your strips at 3.5 inches wide. And all of the measurements are included in the class. But 3.5 inches wide. So 3.5 inches times 4 is okay, 3.5 times 2 is 14 inches. So you'll use 14 inches from the length, which gives you a fairly sizable piece for the rest of the whatever you use the rest of it for. If you are if you use the same color for the binding and the piping that maybe you use for the for the squares in the border, if the instructions are telling you for the squares in the border to cut widthways, you can always cut them lengthways instead.
Okay.
Does that help? Does that get you into confusion?
I think that all of the instructions do say width of fabric for cutting
Yeah,
them
they
out.
probably do, and you can still cut with the fabric, but given that you're going to have chopped 14 inches off the side, your width of fabric is going to be a little narrow. Do you want me to pull up the instructions and we can have a more in-depth look at them?
If you have time, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Let me just see here. The butterfly. Let's see. Okay. Let me share my screen here. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so you've got there's three different colors here used for the diamonds
Right.
in the borders. So any one of those colors you could use for the binding. I've used this color here,
Mm-hmm.
the dark teal, and looks like I used the green for the piping. So let's see. It's saying so. Pool is the pool, ocean, and pear. Pool is this color here. Ocean is darker teal, and pear is this one. So when it says 1 yard of pool, quarter of a yard of both of these two, if you go to 1.5 yard, let's see, no, it would be ocean. If you went up to 1.5 yards of ocean so that you can do the binding, typically I like to put a darker color for the binding because that kind of contains everything inside the quilt. Whereas if you use a lighter color, it's almost like everything has the possibility of flying off into outer space.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So if you got 1.5 yards of ocean, then you would have more than enough to do the binding and take care of this quarter yard that you need for everything else, right?
Okay.
For the piping, um, it's a bit extreme to say go to a yard and a half of this for the piping as well. In an ideal world, that is what I would do. A pinch, you could join the piping fabric if you cut it across the width, because you're only going to be cutting inch wide pieces for the piping. So at a pinch, you could do those joined. If you do that, then you can add just an extra quarter of a yard on here, so 1/2 yard instead of a quarter yard. But you do want to make sure that you join the binding pieces on the diagonal. So you want to cut the ends at 45 degrees and press the seam open when you join them, join the lengths together. So that one's going to be up to you. The easy way is to just buy 1.5 yards so that you
Okay.
can cut them in the one strip. So for the ocean, let's see. So for the ocean, it's saying you want to cut with the fabric by 2 inches for the diamond. So instead of cutting, first of all, cut the binding, right? So you're going
Okay.
to cut that 54 inches by 3.5, 4 pieces. And then with the you'll have the remaining width of fabric. You'll need 2 pieces of the remaining width of fabric by 2.5 so that you can cut the squares for the diamonds. Okay.
Okay.
And then the 2 pieces 4x4 for the corners. That should be easy just to cut from what you've got left. So what else? How big was the ocean? Yeah, the ocean was a quarter yard. So that's really all that you need for the ocean. So the binding is going to be the bulk of it, and these pieces. So you will have a decent sized piece of fabric left at the end of it.
Okay. Okay, so the binding is going to be, where did I see it?
And it's probably got the statement about binding it right at the end, right?
Okay, binding is 3.5 inches wide and the piping is 1 inch wide.
Yes.
Okay.
So just so that you know where we get those numbers from, for the piping, you're going to take the 1 inch wide. You want to get some number 3 crochet cotton to use as the cording that goes in it. And this is all explained in the class for the video, with the video. You'll tuck the cording along the center of the 1 inch wide piece and basically just fold it in half. What kind of machine do you have?
Bernina 790 plus.
Okay, you'll want to get, if you don't already have, a number 31 5-groove pin tuck foot.
31. Okay.
Yes, I think it's 31.
Pin tuck. Okay.
5-groove pin tuck foot. And
Right.
you'll use that to make the piping and to apply the piping onto the binding. So the binding, if you're finishing with a 1/2 inch, you've basically got a 1/2 inch for the seam allowance, a 1/2 inch to go on the bottom, a 1/2 inch to go on the top, which gives you 1.5 inches times 2, because you're going to do a folded binding. So that gives you 3 inches, and then the 1/2 inch is to allow a little bit of fudge factor.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have any more questions so far?
I'm with you most of the way. It'll be interesting when I actually sit down to do it, but I will watch that video. How do I save the video that's in the chat for me?
If you click on it right now, it'll open up a link.
Okay.
So that you can purchase the class, and then you'll have the class in your library, so you can go back to it over and over again. So there's printed instructions and there's a video so that you can see every step of the way how the whole thing works. And as I said, once you've learned how to do this, it is my absolute favorite way of binding a quilt, because you don't have to do any hand sewing at all.
Okay. Was this part of another class that you did where you offered it free when you introduced it? So it sounds familiar.
Yes, so look in your library first, because it's possible, depending on what you purchased before, it's possible you might already have it in your library.
Okay. Do you remember which project it was?
Usually, well, it will be a separate product in your library.
Oh, okay, then I don't have it. Okay.
So, okay, yes, we've usually offered it with our Block of the Month programs when we first launched them.
Okay. I have not done any of those. Okay.